What's going on, everybody? Welcome to UGA Sports Rumors versus Facts. I am Blaine Gilmer here with Jed May, Trent Smallwood, and we are here, as we always are, on Monday night live to cover Georgia football recruiting. And guys, it couldn't get to be a bigger week in terms of spring visits for Georgia than this week. There are so many big names coming through Athens this week. So Trent, Jed, how are you guys doing? And what are your thoughts, just general thoughts leading into this huge week for Georgia?
Yeah, and it's finally, I think we talked last week about how Georgia wants to get these guys in town for spring practices, and spring practices, of course, are starting tomorrow. So visitors start this week. This weekend coming up is huge, and I'm sure the next few weekends will be all leading up to G-Day, April. I think it's April 15th. So the next month is going to be pretty busy on the visitor front.
Trent?
Yeah, looking forward to seeing how this quarterback thing plays out, and getting these guys on campus, and if Georgia is able to land Dylan Raiola, what other people are coming with him? Because it sounds like having a couple big 5-star receivers on campus this past weekend, and it could be some noise happen if Dylan does commit.
No doubt. And we're going to be talking a lot about those visitors. We're going to go ahead and scroll some of them that have already been there, the 11th through, and then that are going to be through the 16th. And then we'll get into the weekend visitors, add those on here in just a little bit, but you'll see those scrolling across the bottom. Before we get too much further, I want to say that as always, Rumors vs. Facts presented by Auto Owners Insurance in cooperation with Turner Wood & Smith Insurance. Great customer service from the people at Turner Wood & Smith. They've been in business for over 100 years, can help people not only in the state of Georgia, but regionally, nationally. And if you need life insurance, home insurance, car insurance, business insurance, anything like that, Auto Owners, great policy provider. I know firsthand, my family, they help us out a lot with a lot of our needs, not only business, life insurance, home insurance, all of that stuff. So make sure to check those guys out today. You can see their URLs in the description. Also, drop us where you're listening from. We got Jason Hildreth from Beaufort, South Carolina. Got George Freeze from Leesburg, Georgia, in here with us. Andy Stowe is in here once again. Lionel Hutto from Plant City, Florida. Tony Glover from Jacksonville, North Carolina. So appreciate all of you guys tuning in, and we're going to be talking recruiting, answering questions from the UGA Sports Vault. Also, okay, I got to rectify this from last week. Cody said he put in a super chat last week. I didn't even see the super chat come in because I'm messing with all this other stuff over here trying to do questions and stuff. So, Cody, if you'll drop in the chat what your super chat was about, we'll make sure to address it right off the top here. Appreciate everybody doing that. If you don't know what that is, guys, you can hit that super chat button, and greatly, that is much appreciated as always. So if you're on the YouTube chat and you want to throw us a couple shekels, Trent's having to pay a fortune for his kid to play about 10 different sports. So help Trent out, throw a super chat in there. So his son's quite the athlete going around doing stuff. They need the gas money. Okay. So, throw us a super chat in here. Samuel Burson from Temple, Georgia. So we appreciate everybody tuning in. Guys, you see some of these names scrolling across the bottom. And if you're listening on podcast, no bigger names than the two wide receivers, Jed, that came in. They were here with the South Florida Express for Pylon 7-on-7. Jeremiah Smith, JoJo Trader, 2 5-star receivers, both that go to Chaminade High School in Hollywood, Florida, which Trent was like, man, I cannot believe they go to the same high school. But, Jed, you covered that event this weekend. You talked to both after their visits. Just kind of, give people a little update on that.
First, let me say Jeremiah Smith is an absolute monster. I mean, kid's ranked number 2 in the class and shows he looks like AJ Green, which is who Georgia's compared him to. He's got hops, he's got hands, he's got size. He's everything you would want in a receiver. But yeah, they visited on Saturday, spent a few hours in Athens after Saturday's games were done. And I think, something Jeremiah said, and Blaine, we were talking about this last night. Jeremiah Smith said that the message from Brian McClendon was basically, look, both of you guys could come in here, be day one starters. You've never sat on the bench your entire life, so why would you go somewhere and go sit on the bench? Come to Georgia, be a day one starter, come in, play from the get-go, play 3 years and then go to the NFL. And Blaine, when we were talking about it last night, we were saying that's not really a message that Georgia communicates to guys a whole lot, at least not that we hear from recruits. So to hear that kind of thing, from secondhand, kind of from McClendon to Jeremiah Smith and then to us was very eye-opening. And after seeing him, I mean, JoJo Trader didn't play over the weekend. He had a tooth pulled or something, but Jeremiah Smith, it's easy to see why that kid is the top receiver in the country. So, I mean, he said Georgia views him as day one starters, and it's hard to argue after watching him. So, Georgia will get an official from JoJo Trader, he told me. Jeremiah Smith played a little coy about it, but he did say that Georgia's trying to get him and Dylan Raiola on campus the same weekend. Dylan Raiola will be here the first week in June, I believe, Blaine. So, yep. Keep an eye on that weekend to see if Jeremiah Smith ends up showing up on an official as well. And he said, look, if Georgia gets Dylan Raiola, that's something that I will take note of, and it'll help Georgia in my recruitment. So keep an eye on that. Keep an eye if Jeremiah Smith comes back. And but yeah, Georgia is right in the thick of it with those two guys, two huge 5-star names that were in town over the weekend.
Trent, Georgia, if that is the case, and based on what they're telling us, and also reports that we're getting from sources at Georgia that things have gone very, very well so far, and Georgia's really making up ground with those two receivers, that would be one of, if not the most dynamic wide receiver duos that Georgia would have ever pulled in a class.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to, I would say AJ Green, Tavares King. Yeah, I'm back in that, but yeah, it definitely would be the most dynamic. And you're talking about two on top of what you already have. It'd probably be the best wide receiver class that Georgia's had in a long, long time, long as I can remember. So yeah, those two are definitely dynamic athletes. Would definitely fit well in any offense, I guess, unless you're running it all the time. But yeah, I like where Georgia, sits. That they, we're not initially in the top 5 for is it JoJo Trader, and now in that top 5, going to get an official visit. So that's big news. Made up a lot of ground over the weekend. So I like where Georgia sits moving into the spring.
And you Ed, what you said about the day one starter thing, that is not something that Georgia just throws around to guys. From everybody we've talked to, that is a very rare thing. So obviously, if they felt comfortable, saying that, then it must have been pretty adamant, driven home by McClendon and company when they were in Athens. And that's just not something. I mean, I'm sure. Listen, it goes without saying, Georgia's always going to make people work for it and compete and all that kind of stuff. You got to do your part. But just to say they believe that you can do that day one is pretty remarkable.
Yeah, and thinking ahead, Jeremiah Smith with his size and everything would kind of project as that X type, right? And you think of what Georgia's got at that position. Marcus Rosen-Jackson is there. I believe this is his senior year, I think, right? 2023 would be. So, I mean, there's no reason he couldn't come in and be a day one starter when you look at, okay, Tyler Williams is that X kind of guy.
You just think Raiola
Thomas, right? I mean, there's just not a whole lot. There's no reason he couldn't be if he comes in and works. The same with JoJo Trader. I mean, he's a guy, he'd probably be a little bit more, a slot, a Z type, like a guy like Lad McConkey, who also I think is gone after this year, after 2023. So, yeah, those guys are huge talents. And again, there's no, like you said, Blaine, it's not like in practice they would come in and be given anything when they get there. But I think what McClendon was trying to communicate is, look, if you guys come in and do what you're supposed to do, work hard, you're going to get a lot of playing time your freshman year. And I think that's the message that has been communicated to those guys. They know that opportunity abounds in Athens. So we'll see if it pays off with a commitment in the end.
No doubt. So not only that is big deal, but they mentioned in the interview Dylan Raiola, right? That's the name that has been, invoked a lot, and there's been so many, predictions and changes of minds and all that kind of stuff that have been going on. But I can tell you, just in speaking with Dylan Raiola, with people close to him, with people close to this recruitment, there is a ton of anticipation for this visit, a 2-day visit that they're going to be in Athens. And, we're going to have specific questions on the vault, but Trent, a lot of people are comparing the Raiola recruitment to that of Arch Manning. And I don't know, it feels totally different to me in terms of how Georgia is approaching this and also just the circumstances around it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot different. Just the simple fact that Arch Manning was their guy, or it was nobody, and Georgia already has somebody in this class. That makes it a little different. And also, I mean, I know Dylan Raiola is a big name. It doesn't get much bigger than the Manning family, and that's a little different. We got more communication. There's a little bit more insight. Talking with the Raiola recruitment, we had to base a lot of stuff in the Manning recruitment off of just basically what we were hearing, what they were telling the coaching staff, what we were hearing from the Georgia side, trying to fish for stuff on the other side, and this is a little different when it comes to overall recruitment.
Yeah, back in Cody's super chat from last week, he was saying I was holding out a solid commit regarding Raiola. That is not the case. That is not the case. What I'm saying is he's not committed anywhere else either. And people like to throw those kind of narratives out there. It seems like every visit, he pops up in Nebraska. People put in prediction Nebraska. He pops up out in L.A. Well, they're going to put in predictions. People got to realize Dylan Raiola trains at 3D QB out there in LA. Okay. So, and it's not a far ride from Arizona to LA. So they'll go out there for the weekend and do some things like that. So yeah, he's been to LA a few times. That's been part of it, is he's been training, doing quarterback training out there. Lane Kiffin's son, Knox, actually trains out there. They fly out there, no doubt, on a private jet and stuff like that, and do quarterback training. But this visit is not only just highly anticipated by Dylan himself, because the Raiolas are very, very much looking forward to just seeing the competition on the field at Georgia. Okay. They're looking forward to seeing what it looks like every day in practice. And there's a lot that goes into that, Jed. It's not just, okay, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to look and see how Mike Bobo's coaching quarterbacks. I'm going to look at how the quarterbacks that could potentially be ahead of Dylan or Ryan Puglisi, if they do come to Georgia, what they look like. That's not just, it's also looking across at the other side of the ball and saying, what does that defense look like that I'm going to be going against every day as compared to the other options that I have? Because that has a lot to do with your NFL development.
Yeah, well, what's something that Georgia has really started preaching, especially in the last couple of years, is okay. And it's kind of funny because we were just talking about being a day one starter. The kind of message is, even if you're not playing a lot day one, you get better in practice every day because you're going against, how often look at the combine interviews we did with these guys. How often Nolan Smith said, hey, my whole career I was going against Andrew Thomas, Isaiah Wilson, Jamari Sawyer, all these guys in practice getting better. So that's kind of the same thing. See what the competition is like. Look at the, Malachi Starkses of the world, or the Kamari Lassiter, all these guys who, like you said, Dylan would be competing against in practice, especially if that year one, if he ends up working on the scout team some, and he's really going to get a good look at that first team defense. So, yeah, like you said, there's a lot more that goes into it. I'm sure they will be interested to see how Mike Bobo works with the quarterbacks, just because it'll be the first time his third practice as offensive coordinator this time around. But yeah, there's definitely a whole lot that goes into it, getting to see one of these Georgia practices.
But Trent, it's also not the only insight that the Raiolas will have had to Mike Bobo. Heck, Dom Raiola played with Matt Stafford for years, and just in talking to him, there's been talks that, hey, back in back then Stafford talked about Bobo when they were at Detroit together. So I'm sure that Dylan's able to pick the brain of Matthew Stafford and sees, stuff like that, what he thinks about it. So good insight there for Dylan.
Yeah. And, they're going to come in, they're going to do their homework. They're going to look at, like Jed said, they're going to, I saw the little comment, iron sharpens iron. That's one thing I'm interested in seeing in spring practice, how much Gunnar Stockton's improved just for the simple fact that he's going up against this defense all year. But on the other hand, they're going to look at everything. They're going to look at how Georgia is in the meeting room. How's the chemistry on the team? Just every aspect of an organization, and Georgia's top notch in those situations. So there's no doubt in my mind that Georgia's going to blow it out of the water. But I think they're going to look at every aspect as of the organization as a whole before they make a decision.
No doubt. And you see some of these names that are scrolling through here, whether it's, at running back, you got 2 running backs, one coming in tomorrow, and Anthony Carey out of Florida, and then also 2024 running back Christian Clark, who I spoke to this past weekend. He's out of Arizona, and he's familiar with Dylan Raiola, who also is from Arizona. But Christian Clark, he's got so many connections. His dad grew up in the Wilkes County area, grew up knowing Garrison Hurst. He ended up playing for Jim Donnan at Marshall, and they still have family here in Georgia. So Christian Clark, he said, Georgia feels like a second home to him already when he comes back and visits his family and things like that around the Augusta area. So I called it a dream come true type offer especially for his dad, Jed. And it's just a young man who's seen just bukus of Power 5 offers come in since January.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm sure it's been such a whirlwind the past couple months. And it seems like that's kind of what this springtime is for, is when schools start looking at senior film. And it seems like every story I've written over the past couple months has been, so-and-so's recruitment has really picked up. But, talking about Christian Clark, with all those offers that have come in, for him to say something like you said, Blaine, the Georgia offer really stands out. It's a dream come true, all that stuff. It shows that Georgia's really in there. I believe you put this in your story. Georgia's a strong contender to get an official visit at some point, and with Dwight Phillips already committed, Georgia's kind of looking for that second running back, and Christian Clark is certainly up near the top of the list of targets that they're looking at.
Yeah, Trent, we failed to mention, Tavani Mizell decommits over the weekend, something that we kind of anticipated and saw coming for a little while. It seemed like the communication might have broke down a little bit, maybe between the two sides, a little bit after that commitment. And, he's been pursued by other schools like Oklahoma, stuff like that. But Georgia, I think, has plenty of backs, as we see, Carey, we see Clark coming in, Chauncey Bowens, who's committed to Florida, they're pursuing, Cam Davis, who's committed to Florida State. Lots of backs out there that Georgia's still in hot pursuit of.
Yeah, and we continue to say that, Phillips and Mizell are kind of similar backs, and we didn't think that they would hold on to both of them in the end. And it happened sooner, which is better for both parties. They can, move on, he can go find a home. Mizell can find a home, and Georgia continued pursuit of these other running backs. I look for Georgia to try to go and kind of get an offset guy to Phillips, somebody that probably can run between the tackles a little bit better. Phillips no slouch, but he's more of a speed guy for sure. And try to find somebody like a Chubb, Nick Chubb type to kind of be to go with that Michelle.
Oh, no doubt. So Clark, as I mentioned, is coming in on the 16th, but also coming in on the 16th is Juju Lewis, Julian Lewis, who is, he's been recruited by Georgia since at least the 7th grade. There's pictures of like him and Kirby dating all the way back to Kirby's time at Alabama. That Kirby has known Julian Lewis, at least when he was a little camper over there doing that kind of stuff. So Georgia has been familiar with and pursued Julian Lewis for a long time. He visited a bunch as an 8th grader, visited a bunch last year, of course, had a, record-breaking freshman year, 530-something yards in the state championship game versus Mill Creek for Carrollton last year, and now he's showing up. But before we get into that, Jed and Trent, these names start coming into your mind, and you start thinking – Juju, JoJo, and you're thinking, okay, what could these name situation be like, in 2026? And I got to thinking, what would a Munson Larry Munson call, if Munson was still alive, what would it sound like would maybe in the future if you could do a 2026 Larry Munson call? So I got to think about that. I amused myself a little bit. So here's a little, what in my mind, what that would sound like.
Here we are, 14-7. Georgia has not played their best against the Gators. Despite having won the last 4 national championships, Georgia has come out a little bit slow today. This is the first home game in this series in quite a while. This Athens crowd is ready to explode. So they're going to come out of the timeout here. Big Roderick Robinson had just rumbled down into Gators territory. First down and 10, Georgia on the Gator 45. Juju Lewis. It looks he gets a signal from the sideline. He's going to walk up to the line of scrimmage. Looks like he's changing the play, communicating something with big senior left tackle from South Carolina, Monroe Freeland. Now here's Juju. He's ready. He takes the snap. He eludes the defender. He's going to escape out to the right. He's looking downfield. Looks like he's got a man down there on the 5. Oh, my God, did you see what he did? He just totally made him lose his jock there on the 5. Dives in at the pylon. Touchdown, Georgia. It's Juju to JoJo, and Georgia is up 20-7 with a minute and 35 left here in the first half.
That's what I imagine it would sound like if Larry Munson was still alive. Something along those lines. Juju to JoJo. I can see the shirts and everything printed up now, with all that going on. But that just having a little fun with that, guys, because I think, listen, there's nobody with the talent that Georgia is bringing in now. There was nobody that would be more excited to call that action, Trent, than a Larry Munson.
Yeah, I mean, I just wish you could I could hear him on the radio, because the way this is what I mean. I guess he was here in 1980 when Georgia won that national championship, but with the talent and the way Kirby's got these guys rolling, it would definitely be fun on Saturdays listening to Munson.
Absolutely. So just having a little fun with that. Now we're going to get into vault questions here. But as you see, if you're watching on YouTube, you see the visitors scrolling. We haven't talked in depth on every one of them because there's just so many coming in. And this is just the first kind of batch of them that we've really confirmed. And Jed, I believe these are already on the vault, or they're going to be on the vault tonight. Posted on there. So just a slew of visitors, a bunch of talent coming in. And, it's going to be a lot of fun to catch up with these guys after the visit, see how it all goes down, and we'll have that covered. But now let's go ahead and answer some vault questions. Remember, the show brought to you by Turner Wood & Smith Insurance in cooperation with Auto Owners Insurance. You can catch their links down at the bottom. Both been in business over 100 years, so make sure to check them out. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get one here from, as always, leading it off first, Jed, it's Darth Janus.
Yeah, he asked, what is the news coming out from the JoJo Trader and Jeremiah Smith visits over the weekend?
Yeah, we've kind of talked about that. I think Georgia's just trending up. Like if it was the stock market, you would see them up today after closing. I mean, it'd be quite interesting to see how much up, if you could really inject some truth serum into these guys and see. But I think Trent is, it's as up as it can be without Dylan Raiola already being committed to Georgia, and I think it only goes up more if they are able to land Raiola.
Yeah, I mean, to go from the outside the top 5 to get where you're getting an official visit. I mean, that's kind of a big deal. I would say that's trending up for JoJo Trader. And, Smith, we've always felt Georgia was going to be in this as long as Georgia was in it for Dylan Raiola. Now, if Georgia can land Dylan Raiola, that's going to be a big deal here. They're close. And I do think if Dylan Raiola goes elsewhere, I don't think Jeremiah Smith will come to Georgia. But I do think Jeremiah Smith is a very good option for Georgia right now because of Raiola, because that connection, and I look forward to see if they do visit together this summer. What comes from that.
Absolutely, Jed. I mean, just anything you want to add in terms of the prospects. I mean, I know we touched on it before, but anything that we need to add in there.
I mean, yeah, like Trent said, it's hard to imagine Georgia getting both of those guys. I mean, I think like Trent said, Raiola is going to play a big part in this, and it's just going to watch the visits. I don't think neither one is going to be back before an official. So we mentioned Jeremiah Smith first week in the summer. JoJo Trader isn't sure yet whether he would take an official in the summer or the fall. So it's going to be big. And I know Jeremiah Smith was a guy who, and I'm sure JoJo Traders thought the same way. He's like, hey, we'll see what Georgia does on the field this fall. We'll see what it looks like. So we've heard that from guys a lot. And I think, this year it's with the new offensive coordinator, with the new quarterback, what do things look like? So, I mean, receivers keeping an eye on that isn't a shock, but it's both of these I think are gonna go down to the wire. I know JoJo Trader is gonna commit on or around early signing day. Jeremiah Smith probably, if he's still committed, it'll be coming down to signing day. So neither one of these recruitments are going to be over till the next 9-10 months.
Yeah, but it's not necessarily with these two, but in general, I think you're going to see less and less guys holding out all the way till December to make your decision, Trent, simply because there's only so much NIL money to go around, and people got to jump on it as they get. Now, I'm not talking about illegal or anything like that. I'm talking about literally money available from these collectives, money available from these boosters in the construct that it currently is legal right now. What makes the economy go around is scarcity, right? That is the driving factor, and there's only so much money to go around, and I think that will play an impact in a lot of people's minds on their timeline.
Yeah, that along with the early official visits, a lot of kids wanting to get it done before their senior seasons because even before this era of recruiting, it was more so that a lot of these kids took official visits in the fall. And, a lot of that was cut short due to Friday night games, or they had to work it in at off weeks. It was just kind of a big deal where they didn't get to spend that full time on their official visit. So this kind of works out in I think it works out in Georgia's favor, especially recruiting all over the country the way they are, and being able to get these guys in for a full weekend during the summer or the late spring, and having that full 48 hours.
Absolutely. So got a couple of YouTube questions here. Bobby Sagan said, did y'all say Christian Clark's dad played for Washington Wilkes? Yes, he did. So you may know him if you're asking that question. Tony Wilson says, we're still looking good with Sammy Brown, Riddick as a possible duo. Listen, obviously Riddick, committed, and then you have Sammy Brown, who it looks to be a Georgia Clemson battle. A lot of buzz around Clemson right now, but I'd say you just got to let, a guy like Sammy Brown take his visits. And there's been nobody that's been more, close to that family throughout the last couple of years than Glenn Schumann. So we'll see how it ends up there. I think Georgia still got a really good shot there. Like I said, head-to-head battle. And then the last one we got here, what's the word on KJ Bolden? Any updates, guys, on KJ Bolden? I know Georgia, a lot of sources around Georgia very confident in how things sit with KJ Bolden. I know Kirby Smart and Will Muschamp have taken direct interest in this recruitment, and typically that's good news for Georgia when that happens.
Yeah, I mean, he and we've mentioned this with Edric Houston too. It looks like both of those guys are kind of taking visits to some schools they hadn't seen yet throughout the spring. I know KJ was at Arkansas, I think last weekend or weekend before. So, I mean, that makes sense when you're a guy, you're going towards your senior year. You've only got so much time left to see any places you want to see, right? So, I think Georgia's still in there, right up in there with KJ Bolden. They should be getting an official visit. I guess in the summer. I don't think he's really put a timeline on those, but summer is my guess. And, it's Georgia. It's, Ohio State is in there. I think Clemson's in there with KJ as well. But, I mean, Georgia is in a very good spot, in a better spot with KJ probably than Edric. Georgia and Ohio State with Edric. And we've kind of felt like Ohio State is in front a little bit there. But, yeah, Georgia's in a very good spot with KJ, just with the relationships they've built, as much time as they've put in. If anyone is breaking the donut dog Buford curse, I think it's going to be KJ Bolden this year. So we'll see. We'll see how things go. Once the kind of attention gets turned back towards the favorites, once the summer rolls along.
Trent, I mean, how big was that Jimmy Smith hire by Sam Pittman when he first went out there, the former Cedar Grove coach, getting all those Atlanta area connections? I mean, just getting KJ Bolden on campus for Arkansas probably didn't happen if you don't have a guy like Jimmy Smith out there.
Yeah, it's huge. They got the Jaden Hazelwood transfer, just kind of building that Atlanta connection over there, and yeah, it's been big because Jimmy Smith was a well-known name around not only around the state, around the 707 community with all the big top prospects playing. So yeah, it was huge, and it's still paying its impacts today.
Absolutely. All right, Jed. Here, got one from Big Fatty 94. I know that tickled Jim Donnan to death. Big Fatty entered a question on Donnan's, and Donnan got so tickled he hardly couldn't even answer the question from Big Fatty 94. But there you go.
I am gonna let that username go. It says, "What positions will have the biggest positive and negative shifts in recruiting over the next couple of years?"
I mean, wow, that's kind of an intriguing question. So he's implying that there will be a negative shift in recruiting over the next couple of years. I guess if you're talking about relative to where it is now, I do not see how Todd Hartley can keep up the pace of that he has. So if you're talking about relative to right now, maybe tight end takes a little bit of a step back over the years because Trent, it's just impossible to keep recruiting at that level. I think at tight end, don't you think?
Yeah, I don't see defensive back dropping off with the guys that Georgia has on the staff. I see wide receiver trending up, just for the simple fact that the way the offense is going to, and there's been a lot more passing in the offense. I do see that trending up.
So maybe a trade-off between wide receiver and tight end, just slightly. We're not talking about like a drastic change. I'm talking about just a little slight change.
Yeah.
You could look, I mean, kind of like you said on Hartley, Blaine, if Glenn Schumann were to leave for a head coaching job, which seems like a pretty decent chance of happening in the next couple years, it's hard to imagine that level of inside linebacker recruiting just sustaining. So it could be something there. But looking up, I mean, what Chidera Uzo-Diribe did in his first not even full year at Georgia was incredible, getting Damon Wilson and Gabriel Harris and Sam Mpemba. So, and Georgia's already in on a lot of the top guys in 24 and even 25.
More than incredible. It was insane.
I mean, Kirby Smart said it, and I guess it was signing day. He was like, "We want to get this outside linebacker room back to producing first round picks," and that they're off to a great start with the guys he's brought in. So if you're looking for a positive shift up, maybe outside linebacker. And I mean, it's kind of like you said, like negative is a relative term, but if Glenn Schumann, if and when Glenn Schumann leaves, I could see maybe inside linebacker taking a little bit of a step back.
Yeah. So a little question here from YouTube. Shabazz Ali says, "Is Ra Thomas on campus?" Yes, he is. I saw a video of he posted on Instagram of him and Marcus Rosemy, Jack Saint today working out. So he's there. The charges were dropped, and Georgia, I think, expects him to be a big part of their offense going forward this year. Mike Brown says, "I don't know how you do it with all the insider info you can quote off the top of your head." Hey, appreciate it. Thank you, Mike, for tuning in. That's what we try to do, and on the vault, that's what it is pretty much every day. Scoop being dropped over there, so make sure you tuned in over there. Shabazz also asked his Monday Night Raw on. Yeah, Cody Rhodes, get ready for WrestleMania over here. We're on the road to WrestleMania, people. Get your mind right. Look, we got the belt. We're ready to go. All right. So next question we got on from the vault. Jar 52 wants to know: do you have one school that Raiola is going to choose? What is all of y'all's final pick? So we're not giving a prediction here today because that's what we're not doing.
Where was his last visit?
Yeah, he's going to be going to Georgia Tech. So I imagine somebody on the internet will put in a prediction for Georgia Tech when he goes and see Buster Faulkner down there. But seriously, I mean, this is one of in speaking to Raiola and people around Raiola, it's one of the more level-headed, one of the more well-informed, recruitment situations you can imagine, with the dad being a former NFL player, getting advice from really, really knowledgeable other former players, things like that, taking into account all the different possibilities. You know, I think you just got to let the visits play out. But listen, the all this hoopla about, you know, momentum to Nebraska, momentum to USC, I guarantee you some of the same stuff. Just wait. Some of the sources and reports that have been saying that over the last couple of weeks, Trent, they're going to be saying the same thing about Georgia after this visit comes up. But, you know, I just think Georgia, and have maintained since December 17th, I think, or whenever he decommitted from Ohio State, that I think Georgia is, if not the absolute favorite, right there in this one, and will be until the very end.
Yeah, everything comes full circle. So, you know, visit Georgia, going to Georgia, and visit USC, going to USC, visit Nebraska, going to Nebraska. See who else he visited. But, you know, we've kind of maintained over here that we still feel good about Georgia's chances. We've also said that, I guess over the last month or so, that we felt USC might be Georgia's biggest competition in this. So we know Nebraska's there. You know, there's a couple other schools trying to get him, but we've maintained that Georgia, you know, sits well, and they're going to get him on campus 2 or 3 more times before the summer's out. So we'll see what happens, but I do like where Georgia stands.
Oh yeah, I mean, listen, winning is very important in this. So I think that would narrow it down to a couple of teams on his list, because I think, you know, USC and Georgia are more of the caliber of program that can expect to win year in, year out at this point. But now, at what does USC look like once they go to the Big Ten? Do they automatically, you know, become the 4th best team in that conference with the way that Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan are built in the trenches versus how USC is built? So there's a lot to take into consideration there, Jed. But I just feel, Jed, that Raiola is going to not rush this, because I think they felt they maybe pulled the trigger a little too soon on Ohio State.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny because you mentioned earlier that people were comparing this to the Arch Manning recruitment, and that's another one where it went maybe a little longer than your typical top of the line quarterback would, because those guys like to commit early and bring guys into the class, and that's what Raiola did when he committed to Ohio State. I mean, shoot, I think it was last summer, Lane, if I'm not wrong, and that's a year and a half before he signed, and like you said, they felt they rushed it. So this is going to be another one that, even though he's number 1 player in the country, 5-star, whatever, it's probably going to be the summer, early fall before it's wrapped up, similar to how Manning committed in June or July, I think. So, you know, he'll be in Athens this weekend. There's a visit in June that's kind of on the schedule, and he's going to take visits to other places too, and then we'll see after that. But Georgia's in as good a spot as anybody, but there's also still a long way to go.
And you talked about the practice. You know, we're talking about with the scout teams and being able to go up against the elite defenders, and you know, USC doesn't necessarily have that. I think their cheerleaders are their scout team defense. So
yeah, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy that defense level would have to get so markedly better. But also, what USC has going for them is LA, the LA area, you know, all the opportunities business wise, and you got Lincoln Riley's track record with the quarterbacks, things like that. You know, there is the deal where, okay, Georgia didn't have a 2023 quarterback. USC brought in Malachi Nelson. All these things, I'm sure, are going to be weighed out. JSD Georgia says, tell us about Ryan. He's talking about Ryan Puglisi there. Listen, we've maintained Ryan Puglisi is excellent quarterback. I think he's really, really good. I don't think even Rivals has and it's Jed's fault, because Jed does all the rankings. I don't think that Jed has ranked Ryan Puglisi high enough. And I think he is a guy, when you're talking about a guy who's 6'3", over 200 pounds, can come in, you know, from playing baseball at shortstop and come in relief and throw it, you know, 93, 94 to close the game out, you know, just has a cannon, and that translates over to football. I mean, he's got the arm strength, how he improved from his sophomore year to junior year, Trent. That is single-handedly one of the most impressive shows, you know, of growth in a player that I've seen in a calendar year. Puglisi really stepped it up his junior year.
Yeah, and I think that's the reason why he doesn't get the respect he does today, because he wasn't a well-known, Dylan Raiola is well-known, Juju Smith, Juju's well-known. And you look down the line and, all the well-known quarterbacks, and then you go to Ryan Puglisi. Like, who's this guy from up north? So I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people frown upon him, and he's really, really good. Like you said. I'm interested to see, because the jump he made to his junior year, I'm interested to see that jump that he makes to his senior year, and see how much better he does get.
And he may have a little Stetsonitis, when it comes to the chip on your shoulder, because, let's say whether Raiola comes or doesn't come to Georgia, Puglisi may be like, well, listen, here I was committed for all this time, and all anybody wanted to do was talk about this other guy. So he may come in with a little chip on his shoulder. I know one thing, he's not afraid to compete, and he's a guy that, is said that he doesn't care who comes. He's locked in with Georgia, and Georgia's the school he wants to be at. Probably if we're, injecting truth serum into somebody, like I said, with Smith and Trader, the fact that the transfer portal exists now, and if something doesn't work out, you kind of get a free pass. I think that's a big deal for a lot of these guys, and they're just going to go where they want to go, where they feel like they want to go to school and compete, and let the chips fall where they may. All right, Jed, you can tell us this. You also are the keeper of all commits and silent commits. So how many over under 1.5 commits after this weekend from our man Andy Stowe?
We were talking about this before the show started. At this point, I don't think anyone is like popping after a weekend visit, just because if you didn't commit
publicly, at least
not publicly, right? I don't think at this point you want to take your visits to the spring. But you look at a lot of guys on this list, and you think of guys on the list. You look at Amari Jefferson's a guy Georgia has really been after. Williams Winery is a guy who, Blaine, you had a story on him that Georgia is dying to get on campus, and they're trying to get. Dylan Raiola obviously could end up on Georgia's commitment list. So, and those are just the guys that we've got down so far. So I think, we'll put it this way. I think on early signing day, there will be over 2 commits that come out of this weekend. They're not going to they're not going to pop within the next month or whatever.
I think there'll be more than 3. Like it could be 3 to 4 guys that end up visiting this week in the entirety, going back from the 11th all the way through the 18th or 19th.
This full week.
It could be close to a handful of guys. That's so big, interesting week here. KSDJ 1869 has one, Jed.
Yeah, hearing a ton of Clemson and Sammy Brown chatter. Has your confidence gone down any over the past few months? And do you think Clemson leads?
I've just maintained on the vault and stuff like that from talking to Sammy, talking to people around him, talking, just about his recruitment, talking to sources from around Georgia, people who are familiar with Clemson. I think it's swung back, 50-50, 60-40 either way. Trent, and I think the official visits and things like that are gonna have a big impact when it comes to Sammy Brown.
Yeah, and also we just got off of a time where there's a lot of uncertainty around Glenn Schumann's name and him going to visit places or going to interview places, and I know that the Eagles and that stuff. So I don't look a whole lot into what's happening at this point, because Georgia has set in a good spot. Clemson's always been there for him, and so I look for him to take visits to both places, plus a couple more visits, and we'll see what we hear after that. But I wouldn't say either one of them are standing out over the other one at this point.
OEJ says it was mentioned that Jeremiah Smith compares to AJ Green. And that was apparently coming from the Georgia staff, comparing him to AJ Green. Who would you say Trader reminds you of? Is Trader only a backup plan? I don't think Trader's a backup plan. You can't say a 5-star is a backup plan. I was thinking about this, guys, and I thought I looked back and, I looked at his body type. I looked at how he runs routes, makes contested catches over the middle, has plenty enough speed. And it reminded me of a guy that, was kind of back at the beginning of the Richt era. Reggie Brown. I think Reggie, he reminds me a lot of a Reggie Brown type receiver, a guy who can be physical, a guy who's a smooth route runner, but also, brings a little bit of that toughness there, Trent.
Yeah, I can see that. I don't know who he reminds me of, but I mean, he's just a guy that you can put anywhere on the field and make plays, whether it be slot. You can move him around. He's kind of like a Brock Bowers of the tight end position. I mean, you can just move him all over the field and make plays, maybe even line him up in the backfield. He's just a kind of a do-it-all athlete, but he's got the frame to catch those contested balls over the middle, and also the speed to go be a home run threat.
Is this donut dog in disguise here? But Bobby Sagas more likely to get brown than the Beeford guys? That sounds like a donut dog sentiment right there. Who knows? We'll see. All right, Jay, we got one from Jar 52 here.
Yeah, who in y'all's opinion do you think is our best option at quarterback for next season, and who would you pick?
Oh man, putting us on the spot, and this isn't even a recruiting question. I try to stay in the recruiting lane. But I just think personally, I think that Carson Beck has had the opportunity. He's been on the precipice of being the starter a couple of times in his career, and it's slipped through his fingers. I think that the mindset, as soon as the clock hit triple zeros, or actually even before, because he went in and played against TCU, I think he was already thinking like, okay, this is my team now. This is what I'm going to do. And I think the confidence has changed. I just think Carson Beck's going to be very hard to beat out.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and even talking to him at the national championship and, at media days and everything, you could tell he was a guy, and he said all the right things. I've got to go out there and earn it and whatever, which is true. But you could tell he's a guy who's like, man, I have, a couple things go a couple different ways, and his Georgia career could have looked very different by this point. So I think he's a guy that's I think he would have to do a lot to lose the job. I mean, I think it's his job to give away. And I think he's so ready for the out. I mean, he's waited around 3 years, which is impossible, in the modern era of college football. So I just think this is what he's been waiting for. This is the opportunity that he's almost had for so long, and I think he's going to do enough to he's going to be starting come September.
Yeah, there's no doubt that he's talented. I mean, you've seen his arm talent. I think he's probably gives Georgia the best chance to win from just the overall talent standpoint from his arm. But I think it all come down to his mental aspect. And I think that's what it's been, throughout his career. If he can get it between the ears and really grasp the offense and a leadership role in this offense, I think, you could see Georgia going back to back to back. I think he's the key in this whole thing. And, Georgia's got two talented guys behind him. But I think this is Beck's job to lose, and especially going into the spring. And unless it's Jackson Muschamp, I think he could win it.
Yeah, Jackson Muschamp. Hey, Whit Muschamp, congratulations to that young man. He just committed to Vanderbilt, so it's going to be interesting to see that dynamic when Vandy and Georgia have to play in a couple years. How the dad and son won't be talking for a couple weeks, I guess, with all that getting ready to go with stuff. Although honestly, Georgia could probably give Vandy the game plan and still beat them at this point. But hey, that's changing. Clarkley's trying to turn things around. Beat Florida last year, right? Actually, they beat somebody else too. Who else? They beat Kentucky. They beat Florida and Kentucky last year. Vandy turning it around, a resurgence.
Pretty sure everybody beat Florida last year.
Yeah,
Kentucky beat Florida.
It's crazy how the ebbs and flows of SEC, and now Georgia just seems to be so consistent these days. So very, very interesting stuff. I think over here on YouTube, Jack Moreno asked, are those recruiting announcements scrolling across? No, those aren't recruiting announcements. Those are the dates of the visits that guys are coming. So you're seeing here, breaking on UGA Sports, confirmation of visits, guys coming out this week. So if you're watching on YouTube, that's what those are down there at the bottom. When guys are visiting, what class they're in, what position. We try to put the star rating and things like that on there as well. So appreciate you tuning in, Jack. We appreciate everybody tuning in. We got a bunch of people in here right now. Go ahead and hit the like button, hit subscribe, turn on notifications. We appreciate everybody being in here. Got a couple more questions, or actually one more question here from Pine Tree. That is UGA prime contenders for Elijah Griffin and David Sanders, rivals 2025 number 1 and number 2 overall. Also, you three, Jed, Trent, Blaine, are rock stars. Hey, we appreciate that. Nice compliment. We don't know about that, but we certainly appreciate you thinking that. Pine Star, or Pine, I called him Pine Star, Pine Tree. Not listen, he's got us all flustered over here. All right, so Elijah Griffin and David Sanders. What do you think? 1 and 2 is Georgia prime contenders, Jed?
Yeah, well, first of all, the new 25 rankings come out tomorrow, and I have spent a lot of hours putting that together single-handedly. And
Are they the number 1 and 2?
They are number 1 and 2. The 5-star thing came out today, so and I spent a lot of time on that too. So, y'all make sure you check out my work tomorrow. But no, Elijah Griffin is a kid from Savannah. He is I believe, a strong side defensive end listed out. He's a stud. I mean, I actually really did watch his film, and he's just a game-wrecking type of guy. Georgia was, I think, his first offer. And he's been in Athens and stuff. He's a hard kid to get a hold of. I've never actually seen him in person at a camp or anything, but Georgia's definitely a strong contender for him. Same with David Sanders, who was the number 1 player. We interviewed him at Under Armour a couple weeks ago in the Atlanta suburb of Carrollton. He's got a long-time relationship with Stacey Searles. That helped Georgia when he came to Athens. He's been in Athens, or his first visit to Athens was for the Tennessee game last November. I think he said he's going to be back in Athens this spring at some point. And he's just, I mean, Trent, you saw him in those one-on-ones. David Sanders was just a monster against a pretty good field at that Under Armour event. So
he literally looks like smaller than Darnell Washington and just whoops people's butts. Like, it's just unreal.
That's
like
awesome.
Just athleticism and length, and I mean, it's just unreal. And Jed, you said you watched Griffin's film. You need to watch Puglisi's film. Maybe he'll move up.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, I'm single-handedly the one keeping him from being in the 250. So I guess I need to
do your damn job.
I need to get Roddy to budget a flight up there some point to really get an in-person evaluation. But short answer to the question, yeah, Georgia's in a really good spot with both of those guys, obviously at a pretty early stage in their recruitment, but still.
People on YouTube asking a couple of questions here. Who does Beck compare to in terms of style? Is he JJ McCarthy? He's not JJ McCarthy, because JJ McCarthy is way more mobile than he is. But Beck, I think, is a much better passer of the football, honestly, than JJ McCarthy. I would compare a Beck to a guy, and this isn't, I'm not talking about, of the last couple of years. I'm talking about in like the guy that everybody was excited about coming out of college. Beck reminds me of a young Joe Flacco type, honestly. A huge guy, 6'4", that, just has a cannon of an arm, can move well enough, a very, cerebral guy, understands the offense. That's who I kind of get those kind of vibes off of, Trent.
Yeah, I mean, I think Beck's athletic. He's not a statue. He's not a Mettenberger standing back there.
But he's not JJ McCarthy in terms of his legs.
He's not McCarthy. But I think a lot of people, he don't get enough credit for his arm. I mean, he literally has a cannon on his shoulder. I mean, so I think he's going to impress a lot of people this year. I don't know as far as his style. He's kind of a gunslinger type. I don't know who comparing was, but I do know that he's not AJ McCarron. I think he's got a lot better arm than AJ McCarron. McCarron, he might have a hotter girlfriend, or I guess she's wife now. Hey, do you remember them showing AJ McCarron's? I guess it was girlfriend. That's
Listen, we don't want to get in trouble. Who was the announcer? Musburger. Yeah. Yeah, we don't want to get in trouble.
I just remember the video going back and forth to her over and over. But I don't know who I'd compare him to, but I do think he's going to shock a lot of people with his arm, because I mean he's definitely got
That's that was
Snow Nose.
He came up with that quick.
Randy Hall says compare Mike Matthews to Caleb Downs. Which one would you rather have? I don't care who I'm comparing. I would rather have Caleb Downs. Caleb Downs is the single largest miss by Georgia that there's been. I mean, I'm just telling you, I think he's going to be a day one starter for Alabama. He's going to be an all-pro in the NFL. Best high school football player I've seen. Like he's ridiculously good.
I think he has the impact Malachi Starks has, or bigger for Alabama as a freshman. And Malachi Starks played a big, really a huge role. Because due to the depth of the safety position. But I do think Caleb Downs, he's a lot bigger miss than Justice Haynes was because of the position he plays. I don't know. I can't compare him to Mike Matthews. Yeah, Caleb Downs.
Yeah, Caleb Downs. What do you say, Jed? Mike Matthews, Caleb Downs.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, Caleb Downs is he's incredible to watch. I will say, like, from a Georgia perspective, like they're recruiting Mike Matthews as a receiver. So if you look at a Georgia perspective and say, okay, do you want a stud safety, or would you like to add that alpha male type to a receiver room? I could see the argument made for Mike Matthews just because he's a great talent at that receiver position. But in a vacuum, nah, man, Caleb Downs he's just a stud. He's like Trent said, he's going to be especially enrolling early. I mean, he's got a chance to do some really big stuff for Alabama this year.
Especially how bad Alabama safeties were last year. He's got a really, really good chance to come in and make an impact. So guys, that's all the YouTube questions. That's the vault questions. We've ran through it all. UGA Sports Rumors versus Facts, presented by Turner Wood & Smith Insurance in cooperation with Auto Owners Insurance. Check their information out in the description. Make sure you hit that like button. Simple, that thumbs up. It helps us out so much. Appreciate you doing that. Subscribe, turn on notifications. Make sure you're a member of the vault because we're going to have breaking stuff coming out all week, reaction from these visits, all that good stuff. Guys, Trent, Jed, anything you want to leave the people with before we sign off here?
No, I mean, just like you said, keep it locked. We'll have visit reaction all week. The new rankings are coming out tomorrow, and spring practice starts tomorrow. We have sort of actual real football to talk about. So a lot of good stuff coming your way at UGA Sports. Obviously,
Jed's not a fan of the XFL, Trent. He's saying spring football, college, real football.
You didn't see AJ McCarron, and I mean he was lighting it up yesterday.
There you go.
But yeah, don't miss the show next Monday. It should be a big one after following.
Quite interesting, that show. Who knows? We'll see. We'll see what happens. But for sure, hey, we've covered it all. Time to sign off. We appreciate you guys tuning in with us. Do so next Monday, 8:30. And also, I'm on live with Tavares King and Noshawn Marino on Wednesday night. We'll be talking about biggest questions for each SEC East team heading into the spring and summer. So make sure to check that out as well. For Jed May and Trent Smallwood, I am Blaine Gilmer. We'll catch you guys next time on UGA Sports Rumors versus Facts.